The last few years has really convinced me of a gap we have in Christian theology. Okay? I can't fix this gap in one lesson, but I am going to throw myself into the breach for a second, all right? We have a real gap in Christian theology called the last part of the Old Testament. Most of us, those are the crispy books. They're still crunchy because we've never bothered to break open the Hoseas and the Jonahs and the Zephaniahs and the Zechariahs and the Micahs and the Nahums, and they still crack when we open them 12 years after we bought our Bible. And we got to go look them up in the table of contents. And we think they're called minor prophets because they're not as big a deal. If you ask a lot of Christians, go, what's the major prophets? Oh, those big books. What's the minor prophets? Oh, they're the little ones that nobody, we don't pay attention to. And honestly, major and minor just simply means the major ones wrote more and the minor ones didn't write as much. But it doesn't mean importance. And also, I think sometimes we get lost in the major prophets only looking for Jesus prophecies. So a lot of things, the only things people know about Ezekiel is like future temple prophecies. And the only thing you know about Isaiah is Jesus going down the cross in Isaiah 53 and the virgin birth. And so they go, all that good stuff about Jesus back in there. But in reality, the whole second half of your Old Testament, by the way. Okay, let me start over. Your biblical chronological history ends, Old Testament ends at the end of 2 Chronicles, way up here. And then everything behind that is filling in the gaps of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings. All those other books are the stories thrown in. And what's happening way back here in the Kings? Israel and Judah are in trouble. And it's not because they're lying to each other, or they're stealing their neighbor's property, or they're committing adultery. God has given sacrificial systems for all of those individual sins. It's because they're committing the corporate sin, the national sin of not taking care of the land. They were given this land, and they butt the property up next to one another, and they stop honoring Jubilee, where they give the property back at the end of 50 years. And they start mistreating the stranger in their land, and they stop taking care of the poor, and they ignore the widows and the fatherless. And God keeps swooping in throughout the Old Testament prophets going, if you keep this up, an invader's going to come in, he's going to take your land. And guess what happens? Invaders come in, take their land, and then there'll be a generation that repents and goes, we'll do better. We won't treat strangers wrongly anymore, and we'll take care of the widows and the orphans. And God goes, okay, and he brings them back. And it's amazing. They keep coming back, and then guess what happens? And they're just like little kids. So I'm not going to do that again. And then boom, they do it again, and then this happens. And the land's taken away, and I think there's a gap in our Christian theology that because we don't look at that second half of the Old Testament, we don't realize that the issue that was going on at the last half of the Old Testament is they ignored the front half. And the front half was, love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love your neighbor as yourself, there's going to be hell to pay. Like literal. And I don't mean spiritual hell. I mean a literal hell on earth to pay. When Jesus comes, he's not preaching a new message to Israel called, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, love your neighbors. He's preaching the same old message they've heard and ignored for 1,000 years. And they keep ignoring it, even though God in the flesh is showing them what it would look like. And you know why they keep ignoring it? Because when God in the flesh shows them what it looks like, they don't like it. Because what's it look like? Love Samaritans and Roman centurions and prostitutes and the leper and the Judas. Share communion with them, feed them, clothe them, hug them, spend out of your own pocket. And at every turn, Jesus is offensive. And sometimes I think we mess up why Jesus was offensive. I don't know why the average Christian thinks Jesus was offensive, but we all know he was because he ends up on a cross. But have you ever sat and thought about what it was that made him offensive? And I present to you that Matthew 7, 12, 13, and 14, in a nutshell, is what made him offensive. It's Jesus saying, listen, your own law and your own prophets always taught you to treat other people the way you wish they would treat you. And by the way, you're not doing it. Narrow is the gate of the people that do it. There's just not a lot of us that do it. He goes, there's just not a lot of people that treat other people as the way they would like to be treated. He said, in fact, the road is so broad, full of people that don't do it, that it's easy to get on the way of not doing it. Because it's the system we've all become so comfortable with that we don't even think it's a problem anymore. And I think one of the reasons that we've become comfortable with it is because it really is the definitive system of this world.